Have you ever felt embarrassed or frustrated after making a mistake? Maybe you've tried something new, and things didn't go as planned, whether it was a presentation at work, a new hobby, or even just trying to learn a new skill. We've all been there. The feeling of making a mistake can be tough, and it's natural to want to avoid failure at all costs. But what if I told you that making mistakes is not only normal, it's actually an essential part of learning and growing? In today's episode, we're going to explore why making mistakes isn't something to fear, but something to embrace. We'll discuss how mistakes can be powerful tools for growth, how they teach us valuable lessons, and how shifting our perspective on failure can open up new doors for success. So, let's take a moment to think about it. When was the last time you made a mistake? Maybe it was something small, like getting a math problem wrong in school or misjudging a recipe in the kitchen. Or perhaps it was something bigger, a missed opportunity, a failed project, or an embarrassing moment in front of others. It's easy to dwell on the negative aspects of these experiences, but here's the thing: every time we make a mistake, we are actually learning. Every wrong turn is an opportunity to correct our course. Every setback can lead to a comeback. Today, we're going to talk about how mistakes, no matter how big or small, are part of the learning process. By reframing our view of mistakes, we can start to see them as stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. And the more we allow ourselves to make mistakes and learn from them, the more confident and capable we become. So, if you've been avoiding making mistakes or feeling discouraged by them, this episode is for you. Let's dive in and discover how embracing mistakes can help us grow in ways we never imagined. Welcome back to the Clear English Podcast. We've all been there, trying something new and suddenly realizing we've made a mistake. It's uncomfortable, right? Whether you're trying to learn a new skill, take on a challenge, or simply improve your day, there's always that moment when things don't go as planned. Most people view mistakes as something to avoid or be ashamed of. But what if I told you that making mistakes is actually one of the most powerful ways to learn and grow? In today's episode, Why Making Mistakes is Part of the Learning Process, we're going to talk about why mistakes aren't just inevitable, they're essential to our growth. I'll be sharing personal stories, explaining the science behind how we learn from mistakes, and offering a few practical tips on how to turn your mistakes into valuable lessons. By the end of this episode, I hope you'll see mistakes in a whole new light and feel more confident in embracing them, whether in your personal life or career. So, let's get started and dive into why mistakes aren't something to fear, but an important part of the journey to success. When we're young, mistakes feel like the end of the world. Whether it's a school test, a sports competition, or a family dinner where you accidentally spill something, it's easy to internalize the idea that mistakes are shameful. I remember being in school, always afraid of answering questions wrong in class. I had this overwhelming fear of being judged by my classmates and teachers. Mistakes, to me, seemed like evidence that I wasn't good enough or capable. The fear of making mistakes often held me back from trying new things. For example, when I first started learning to play the guitar, I felt nervous. I would practice for hours, but no matter how hard I tried, I'd hit wrong notes and struggle with chords. Every time my fingers fumbled, I felt discouraged and wondered if I'd ever get it right. What I didn't realize then was that my mistakes were part of the process. They weren't signs of failure but rather stepping stones to improvement. I think many of us can relate to that fear. As we grow older, the stakes seem higher, and we start to believe that mistakes might define us or that they'll keep us from succeeding. It's easy to think that those who never make mistakes are more skilled, more successful, and more capable than we are. But this mindset is exactly what holds us back from truly learning and growing. The turning point for me came during a personal project. I decided to start a blog. I had this dream of creating content that would help others learn new things, but the fear of making mistakes kept me from getting started. I was terrified of producing content that wasn't perfect. What if people didn't like it? What if I made a mistake that would ruin my credibility? I spent more time worrying about the possibility of failure than actually taking the first step. Eventually, I realized something important. I could either continue letting the fear of making mistakes hold me back, or I could embrace the idea that mistakes were part of the learning journey. I decided to go for it, imperfections and all. My first few blog posts were far from perfect. I made some grammatical errors, and my writing style was still developing. But guess what? People responded positively, not just because of the quality of my writing, but because they saw my willingness to be real and transparent about the process. They appreciated the effort, and in turn, I started to appreciate my mistakes as learning opportunities. This shift in perspective was a game changer. Instead of fearing mistakes, I started to see them as valuable lessons. Mistakes weren't a reflection of my inability, but of my courage to try, to push beyond my comfort zone, and to improve. Each mistake I made brought me one step closer to getting better at what I was doing. And the more I embraced them, the more confident I became. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned from making mistakes is that they often reveal our weaknesses, but in doing so, they offer a chance to improve. In the early days of writing my blog, I had no idea how much I didn't know about SEO, search engine optimization. My first few posts weren't getting much traffic, and it was frustrating. But instead of getting discouraged, I started researching and learning more about how to improve my content's reach. Each time I made a mistake in understanding SEO, I learned something new, and eventually, I started seeing more visitors on my blog. The same principle applies to any area of life, whether it's learning a new language, trying a new recipe, or improving your fitness. It's the mistakes we make along the way that teach us the most valuable lessons. If we get everything perfect from the start, we don't get the opportunity to identify areas where we can improve. Mistakes provide that feedback. They show us where we need to put in more effort, where we need to learn, and where we can grow. Think about it. If every time you tried something new, it worked perfectly, would you truly learn? Would you know what it takes to improve and push through challenges? Probably not. It's through making mistakes, fixing them, and continuing to try that we build real skills and resilience. This growth through mistakes isn't just about acquiring knowledge or skills, though. It's also about personal development. When we make mistakes, we're faced with choices. We can either give up or push forward. The mistakes that seem like failures at first often lead us down paths we never would have considered otherwise. I've often found that the most valuable lessons come from moments of struggle or failure. For instance, in the beginning of my podcasting journey, I had countless technical difficulties. The audio was poor, and I stumbled over my words during recordings. At times, I felt like quitting because I was embarrassed by the mistakes I was making. But I kept at it, learning from each episode. Now, years later, I've developed a much deeper understanding of the technical side of podcasting. I've even learned to embrace the occasional hiccup because I know that it's just part of the process. The mistakes I made along the way were what shaped my confidence in this field. It's the same with any skill. When you start out, mistakes are inevitable, but they help you develop a mindset of perseverance. Each time you correct a mistake, you grow a little bit stronger. Over time, these experiences build up, and you become not just more skilled, but more resilient and open to learning. There's also scientific evidence to support the idea that mistakes are critical for learning. Studies show that making mistakes activates a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is responsible for error detection and learning. When we make a mistake, this area of the brain helps us correct it and improve our performance the next time. Essentially, our brains are wired to learn from mistakes. So when we avoid them, we're actually preventing ourselves from growing. This is why it's so important to embrace mistakes instead of fearing them. Each mistake is an opportunity for your brain to adapt and build new connections. The more mistakes we make and learn from, the stronger our brains become at problem solving and adapting to new challenges. It's not about getting everything right on the first try, but about building the mental flexibility and resilience that come from working through challenges. I'm sure I'll continue to make mistakes, and that's okay. In fact, I look forward to the learning opportunities they'll provide. Embracing mistakes doesn't mean that we stop trying to do our best or that we stop striving for improvement. It simply means we stop fearing mistakes. We start seeing them as part of the process, not the end of the road. So, the next time you find yourself making a mistake, don't see it as a failure. Instead, think of it as a chance to grow, to learn, and to get better. You're building something more than just skills. You're building resilience, self-confidence, and a deeper understanding of yourself. Mistakes don't hold you back, they push you forward. As we wrap up this part of the episode, I want you to remember one thing: making mistakes isn't a sign of weakness or failure. It's a sign of progress. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn, improve, and grow. The more you embrace this mindset, the more you'll see the incredible value in the process of learning through mistakes. Let me share a story with you from a few years ago. I had decided to take on a new challenge, learning how to play the guitar. Now, I had zero experience with the instrument, but something about the idea of playing music drew me in. So, I picked up a guitar, watched a few online tutorials, and was ready to play my first song. What happened next? Well, to say it didn't go smoothly would be an understatement. Every time I tried to strum the chords, my fingers just didn't land where they were supposed to. The notes were off, my fingers would slip, and the rhythm was completely out of sync. It felt like I couldn't get anything right, and the more mistakes I made, the more frustrated I became. I kept repeating the same errors, unable to make progress. At first, I thought, this is impossible. I'll never be good at this. I started to feel embarrassed about my mistakes and, if I'm being honest, a little discouraged. It was hard to shake the feeling that my mistakes were somehow a reflection of my failure. I feared that each wrong note meant I wasn't cut out for this whole guitar playing thing. But here's where everything changed. Instead of quitting, I decided to shift my mindset. I stopped being so hard on myself and started asking a new question: what can I learn from this mistake? Instead of seeing each error as a failure, I began to see them as opportunities to improve. With every wrong chord and missed note, I took a moment to figure out what went wrong and how I could fix it. As I embraced my mistakes, I noticed something important: I was slowly getting better. It wasn't a huge leap, but with each mistake, I made a tiny step forward. My fingers started landing in the right positions, the rhythm became smoother, and I could feel the song coming together. And one day, without even realizing it, I was able to play the entire song with confidence and ease. Looking back, I realized that none of this would have been possible without those early mistakes. The mistakes were the very things that taught me how to play, and without them, I wouldn't have progressed. They didn't hold me back, they pushed me forward, teaching me to be patient, persistent, and to embrace the learning process. And that, I think, is the power of making mistakes. So, why are mistakes so important? Well, there's actual science behind it. Our brains are wired to learn from errors, which is a fundamental part of how we grow and develop new skills. When we make a mistake, our brain registers that something didn't go as planned. It then uses that information to make adjustments, helping us avoid repeating the same mistake in the future. This process, known as error-based learning, is essential for our progress and improvement. Think of mistakes as signposts, guiding us toward better decisions and strategies. Every time we make an error, it's like our brain is taking note: this didn't work, let's try something else next time. It's through this trial and error process that we get better at almost everything, whether it's learning a new skill, understanding a concept, or navigating through life's challenges. For instance, let's consider language learning. When you're learning a new language, it's inevitable that you'll make mistakes. You might say the wrong word, mispronounce something, or even mess up the grammar. At first, these mistakes can feel awkward, even embarrassing. But here's the cool part: by making those mistakes, you're actually helping your brain build the correct pathways. Each time you make an error in your speech, your brain is actively figuring out what went wrong and how to fix it. Over time, as you continue to practice, your brain starts to recognize the correct patterns and structures. Eventually, the right words and pronunciations start coming to you more naturally. Those initial mistakes are like the stepping stones that lead you to fluency. The same goes for any skill you're learning. Whether it's playing an instrument, cooking, or even working on a new project at work, mistakes are not something to fear. They're an important part of the process. Our brains are designed to learn from errors, to adapt, and to grow through them. So, the next time you make a mistake, don't get discouraged. Understand that it's not a setback, it's a critical part of the learning process, helping you build stronger mental pathways for success. Making mistakes doesn't just teach us new skills, it also builds our confidence. I know, it sounds strange at first. How can making mistakes help you feel more confident? But when you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. Every time you make a mistake and keep going, you're proving to yourself that you can overcome challenges. You're showing yourself that you're capable of pushing through difficult situations and learning from them. It's a lot like training your muscles. When you start working out, it's tough. Your muscles get sore, and sometimes you feel like giving up. But with consistent practice, your body gets stronger. The same goes for your mindset. Each time you make a mistake and learn from it, you're building mental resilience. You're training yourself to handle setbacks and move forward with even more determination. And that resilience, it's what helps you grow your confidence. But there's another important aspect of this: accepting mistakes as part of the process is a sign of maturity. As we grow older, we start to realize that no one is perfect. Even the most successful people have failed many times. In fact, many of them would say that their failures were more valuable than their successes. They didn't let their mistakes define them; instead, they used them as stepping stones to improve and reach even greater heights. This is a mindset shift that comes with experience and self-awareness. Think about famous innovators like Thomas Edison, who made thousands of attempts before inventing the light bulb, or Michael Jordan, who was famously cut from his high school basketball team. They didn't let those failures stop them. They recognized that failure is simply a part of the learning process. In fact, many successful people have shared that their biggest breakthroughs came after a series of mistakes, not despite them. That's how you should approach mistakes, too, not as something to avoid or be ashamed of, but as opportunities to learn, grow, and improve. Mistakes give you the chance to take a step back, reassess what went wrong, and come up with a better strategy for the next time. It's all about perspective. When you see mistakes as a natural and necessary part of growth, they no longer seem like failures. Instead, they become valuable lessons that shape you into a more capable, resilient, and confident person. So, embrace your mistakes. Let them guide you to new insights, new skills, and a stronger sense of self. It's through this process of learning and growing from our mistakes that we truly evolve. Okay, so now we know that mistakes are a natural part of the learning process, but how can we handle them in a healthy way? It's easy to feel defeated or frustrated when we make a mistake, but by shifting our mindset and taking intentional actions, we can turn those mistakes into valuable lessons. Here are a few tips to help you deal with mistakes in a productive way. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, try to view them as opportunities for growth. This mindset shift can make a world of difference. When you make a mistake, rather than feeling discouraged, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Or, how can I do this better next time? By focusing on what you can take away from the experience, you not only ease the emotional sting of making an error but also turn it into something positive. Mistakes, after all, are just feedback. They show you what didn't work and point you in the direction of what you can try next. It's easy to be your own harshest critic when you make a mistake. We often judge ourselves more severely than we would judge others. But remember, everyone makes mistakes. It's a part of being human. So, be kind to yourself. Treat yourself with the same patience, understanding, and compassion that you would show to a friend who made the same mistake. Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," try saying, "I'm learning, and I'll get better with practice." This small shift in self-talk can make a huge difference in how you handle mistakes and how they affect your confidence. The most important thing when you make a mistake is to not give up. Mistakes are not the end, they're just a part of the process. Keep trying, keep practicing, and remember that every mistake gets you one step closer to success. When you learn from each error and continue to take action, you build resilience and improve your skills. The more mistakes you make, the more you grow, and the closer you get to achieving your goals. So, don't be afraid to try again. Embrace the learning process, and trust that each attempt brings you closer to mastery. By changing how you view mistakes, treating yourself with kindness, and continuing to push forward despite setbacks, you can handle mistakes in a way that fuels your growth rather than holding you back. Remember, mistakes are not a sign that you've failed, they're evidence that you're trying and learning. Keep going, and you'll be amazed at how much progress you make over time. To sum up, making mistakes is a crucial part of the learning process. It's not something to be ashamed of or afraid of. In fact, it's a sign that you're trying, growing, and getting better. Mistakes are a natural and valuable tool that helps us learn, improve our skills, and build our confidence. The next time you make a mistake, remember that it's not a failure, it's an opportunity for growth. Throughout this episode, we've explored how mistakes help our brains learn and adapt, how they can boost our confidence, and how we can handle them in a healthy, constructive way. When you make a mistake, take a step back and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? By viewing mistakes as lessons rather than setbacks, you can continue to move forward with a sense of purpose and determination. Remember, mistakes are not the enemy. They are our teachers, guiding us toward mastery and growth. So, don't be afraid to make them. Embrace them, learn from them, and keep moving forward, knowing that each mistake brings you one step closer to success. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Clear English Podcast. I hope this episode encourages you to feel more confident the next time you make a mistake and to remember that it's just part of the journey to learning and growing. Keep making those small steps, and I'll see you next time.